Time to get out your hazmat suit because we have caution and danger here, and we fitting to make this radio active. That's right, with Phoenix Gold Special Edition. Let's go to 1999 Cart Audio and Electronics Directory. We're going to open this bad boy up, flip it to the Phoenix Gold section. Can I get a little help? Once we get there, we'll take a look at the amplifiers. Number 2 on the list, the REACTOR. List for $2,500 in 1999. That's equivalent to $4,750 in 2025. Phoenix Gold has been well known over the years for making special edition amplifiers going way back to 1992 and the Frank Ampenstein. In 1996 came the REACTOR, although it didn't hit the market until late 1998. And we have one here in the original case that tells us danger, caution, radiation. I wonder why that is.
Are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear?
I need a nuclear reaction to generate the 1.21 gigawatts of electricity I need.
And here we have the limited edition 6-channel Phoenix Gold REACTOR. This amplifier includes 2 separate amplifiers inside, a ZX450 and a ZX500, encased in this very unique shroud made of 1/16 inch welded steel. Looks like a piece of armor plate with a gloss-coated brushed silver finish. Also, the cover extends well beyond the outside of the amplifier to give you plenty of room to run your wires, etc. But be warned, these things rust over the years. That's right. We are experiencing some chemical reaction going on here. You know what I mean?
You big dummy. This is not a Mickey Mouse program.
4 machine screws hold on the top cover. Let's remove those and take a closer look. Here you can see we'll remove the shroud. You can see there is some space there at the end, so you can neatly run your wires, which is nice. There's the bottom. Got some plexi panels in here so you can see through and see into the guts of the amplifier. Very nice. Couple fans there as well. Do a flyover. You can see the 2 separate amplifiers. There's one on each end, and all the connections come out on either end of the amp. Now, these normally came with some neon tubes and a transformer. However, most of those have died over the years, so you can just throw in some LEDs like I did here and make the amplifier whatever color you want it to be. Now, back in the August 1998 Cart Audio and Electronics, they actually got to visit the Phoenix Gold facility in Portland, Oregon, and see how they put these together. It's a really cool article. I will leave it linked below. They had a metal shop in Phoenix Gold, so they could make all the shrouds using a Mana Lesmac 645 laser cutter for cutting the 16 gauge steel. Also, the serious welding was handled by Viktor Suris, a former Soviet Marine welder. Once we flip the shroud over, we can see some of Victor's work here. Welded the corners. Overall, very nice looking job here on the shrouds, Victor. Thumbs up. Now, they also had a facility for powder coating everything in-house also, and doing the silk screening as well. And don't forget, Tony Picklesmeyer. She inspected every reactor that went out the door, including number 167 we're going to show you today. As I mentioned, this amplifier is essentially 2 separate amplifiers. On one end, we have the ZX450, which is a 4-channel amplifier here. You can see 4 separate outputs for speakers here on the left side. And this one has so many switches. I'm going to let you read the manual and not go over each one of these individually, but we have gain for front and rear. We have bass control, sensitivity. We have RCA inputs and outputs. There are all kind of stuff here. Frequency multipliers. Read until your heart's content. I'll leave a link to the manual below so you can check out all this if you'd like to. Also, we have 4 gauge for power and ground, and the remote terminal there is on the far right. Some of the power supply section is exposed. You can see the 4 capacitors. You can also see the transformer and a fuse. For the capacitors, these are 25 volt, 5600 microfarad. This one has been recapped, so these might not be the original values or capacitance that came with the amplifier. We also see some heat sinks there for some of the output devices as well as the power supply section. And we flip it around to the other end, we'll see the ZX500 amplifier. This is a 2-channel amplifier. It's also bridgeable. We'll see the screw down terminals there on the left with gold plated screws. We'll see this does have RCA inputs and outputs. It has control for sensitivity. It also has crossover controls, all the stuff that you want. Again, I'll leave a link in the video description if you want to read the manual. These have 24 dB per octave crossovers, very nice. Also has 4 gauge insert terminals for your power and ground, and about 12 gauge there for your remote. When the shroud is on, you can actually see through and see some of the insides here, including the power supply section, also in part of the gold-plated circuit board. This side has 6 capacitors for the power supply. You see the transformer there as well. Again, 25 volt, 5600 microfarad. This amp has been recapped. As far as the ratings, the ZX450 side, 75 by 4 at 4 ohms, 150 by 4 at 2 ohms, 250 by 2 bridged at 4 ohms. The ZX500 side, 150 by 2 at 4 ohms, 300 by 2 at 2 ohms, or 600 watts bridged at 4 ohms. Total dimensions including the shroud, 25 inches long, 14 inches wide, 2.6 inches tall. Now we'll set the gain overlap for the ZX450. Here I'm setting the gain overlap. We'll do front channel first, trying to get it to 10 dB. And then we'll do the rear channel here. Get it to 10. There we go. Channels are matching. Now we have the channels matched on the ZX450. Let's fire up the SND Demore Engineering Amplifier Dyno so we can power test the amplifier to find out how much power it puts out. On the left, you'll see the power output in watts. In the middle, the ohm load. On the right, the voltage to the dyno. We'll also have the remote clamp so we can estimate this Class AB amplifier's efficiency.
Hold on to your butts.
4-channel test up first for the ZX450. Since this is 2 separate amplifiers, we're only going to be powering the ZX450 side for this portion. Using all channels, 2 of them are going to the dyno, the other 2 are going to 4 ohm resistors, and we do the 2 ohm test, so we'll be going to 2 ohm resistors. Here we go, let's try it. Rated 75 watts by 4 at 14.4, 1 kilohertz track, certified to 1% distortion. We get 105 watts per channel at 14 volts. Very nice. Now we're going to drop the voltage down to a little over 12 volts. Try the test again and see what we get. And we still get over that 75 watts. 78 watts per channel at 12.24 volts. Very nice. Now let's try the dynamic test. Sends a pulse tone into the amp. Find out how much power we get dynamically. And you can see here, there you go. Keeps counting up. 128 or so average at 14.24. Next up, we'll try the 2 ohm test rated 150 watts by 4 at 14.4. We will be less than 14.4 as you'll see here on the results. Certified test first at 1% distortion. And we're about 138 watts per channel average at 13.81. So a little bit less, but also our voltage was less. And we also dropped it down to 12 volts. We got just over 100 watts per channel at 12.06. Let's reset the dyno here and try the dynamic track. Find out how much dynamic power we have. And yes, these ZX series Phoenix Gold amplifiers do have some dynamic headroom. You can see about 193 watts per channel, 14.04. Now let's bridge the 450 section here, the 4-channel section, down to 2 using the left positive and right negative from each channel. It is stable down to 2 ohms bridge, but we're only going to do 4 ohms bridged on this amplifier. Rated 250 watts by 2 at 14.4. Let's try the test with 1 kilohertz track, certified to 1% distortion, and yes, about 273 watts average at 13.81. Very nice. Let's reset the dyno here for the dynamic track. Send the pulse tone of 1 kilohertz into the amplifier. Find out the dynamic headroom. And there you can see it. Quite a bit more, 100 watts more per channel. We get 377 and 368 at 14.11. Very nice. Here we have the results of the ZX450 side of the REACTOR. You can see the only 2 it didn't meet rating are 2 ohms at 1% in clip. That's because we weren't at 14.4 volts. Had we given it the extra voltage, it would have met that. Efficiencies there on the right. Overall, the amplifier performed kind of right at the ratings. Wouldn't blow us out of the water, but also didn't leave us wanting more. Next up, let's move on to the other side of the amp, the ZX500 side, and do the 2-channel test. Just use both channels hooked straight up to the dyno. It can run 2 ohms bridged or 1 ohm stereo. We will show 2 ohms bridged at the very end of the video if you'll stick around for that. Let's start off with 4 ohms 2-channel rated 150 by 2 at 14.4. Here we go, certified test of 1% distortion. Can we get the 150? And yes, we can. 185, 184 right at 14 volts. Very nice. Now we're going to drop the voltage to around 12 volts. It's only rated 75 watts by 2 in the manual at 12.5 volts. Here you can see 137 watts per channel at 12.28. Let's reset the dyno here for the dynamic track and send the pulse tone 1 kilohertz. There you go, 220 watts at 14.23. As we saw with the ZX450, the ZX500 does have some dynamic headroom. Let's reset the dyno here for the 2 ohm stereo tracks rated 300 watts by 2 at 14.4. Here we go, 1% distortion, 1 kilohertz. Can we get it? And not quite. We get about 278 watts, but we're at 13.88. So we'll have to fix that. But first, let's try the 12 volt test. See what we get at 12 volts. And here you go. We get a little over 200 watts, about 207 watts average per channel at 12 volts. Now let's jack up that voltage some. Try that certified test again. And there you go. 301 watts at 14.43. They really rated these like dead on. So that's pretty cool. Dynamically, send the pulse track into the amp, and once again, this amplifier shines on the dynamic test. You can see here we're pushing up on 400 watts at 14 volts, about 389 watts average per channel. Now I would assume a lot of people back in the day would use the ZX500 section bridge for subwoofers, so that's what we're going to do for this test. We're going to use the left positive and right negative. Again, you can handle down the 2 ohms bridge, but we're only going to do 4 ohms bridged here. We will show the 2 ohm bridge test at the end of the video. It's rated 600 watts at 14.4. We'll send the 1 kilohertz track into the amp, and the voltage is going to drop here. So we got 551, but our voltage was 13.97. I'm like, that's not too fair. So let's jack the voltage up and try it again and see what we get. And here you go, 598 at 14.46. They are really cutting that close, but right at 600 watts. Uncertified to clipping, here we go, 1 kilohertz, and voltage again sagged a little under 14. We get 554. So then we had to try it, of course, with more voltage and see what we get here around the 14.5 volt range. And here is that 600 plus, 612 at 14.6. Now we'll try the dynamic track, again 1 kilohertz, sending the pulse tone into the amp and easily meet the 600 watts. We get over 700, about 737. We also tried it at 14.4 and got over 800 watts. So yeah, this amp does have headroom. As far as the results go, this amp met or exceeded all of its ratings in all the tests. Efficiencies are there on the right as well. So good job, Phoenix Gold. Now we'll bring out again the Car Audio and Electronics, this time June of 1998, where they actually tested the reactor in the magazine. Again, we'll leave a link in the video description below in the pinned comments so you can see these articles if you'd like. You can pause this if you want to see their results, but pretty close to what we got here overall. Now I couldn't help myself. I had to try the 4 ohm bridge test again and see if I could get that 600 watts. So I tried it again. And yes, I got 601, but it took 14.5 volts for me to get it. So the amp is right at the rated power. Pretty crazy. So let's take off 4 screws here on the top so we can take a closer look at the inside of this amplifier. But unfortunately, the wiring for the fans was pretty tight, so I wasn't able to get this all the way off. But anyway, you'll get a closer look here to see the inside of the amp. Now, let's fire it up each side and see what it sounds like. All right, let's power up the 4-channel side. Power up the other side. We have both sides of the reactor here hooked up to the speakers. We have the 4-channel side hooked up just with 2 channels going to the B&W bookshelf speakers. And then we have the ZX500 side bridged going into the JL Audio 10W7. So what do you say we listen to some jams? I say we do it.
driving this train. Years in this lane, there's no stopping this flame. Cause I came to the game and I changed it.
Now before we end the video, we do have to see the 2 ohm run here on the ZX500 side, certified to 1% distortion, 1 kilohertz. What can we get? Oh, 587. The amplifier does clamp down a little bit there and limits the current. However, when we ran the dynamic test, you can see 1200 watts, 14.27. This amp has got the dynamic headroom, has got the juice. Overall, very cool amp. Thanks always for watching. Next time, Big D, I'm out of here.
Like rearranged it to my own domain. Yeah, I got what it takes. Made lots of mistakes, taking shots, skipping breaks, feeling lost, feeling great, popping off, singing straight, never stopped, never changed. All the squad here to play, and I've got something to say. Yeah, I work hard each and every day. I get lost in the words I say. I don't till I hear 'em say.